Welcome to Kingdom First Podcast, God's blueprint for your best life. The podcast that shows you how to win in every area of your life through a biblical worldview. I'm your host, Jonathan Loudermilk, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today. I am a kingdom-minded entrepreneur who's on a mission to help others live their best life by putting God first in their life. I'm also a proud husband and father. Each week, we dive deep into the stories and lives of those who are living a kingdom-first life and how that's impacted every area of their life. We will also be breaking down how to apply kingdom principles for success in life. So whether you've been on your walk with Christ for years now, or you're still just trying to decide if he existed at all, this podcast is for you. Get ready to expand your thinking, challenge your perspectives, and build a life by design. Welcome to another episode of Kingdom First Podcast, God's blueprint for your best life. I've got my next guest in our 8-part series where I'm bringing on men that are truly leaders of building the kingdom of God, and just have amazing testimonials that they've had for their lives. And once again, my goal with this series is to help share these powerful stories so that you can take the parts that resonate with you and help you connect them so that you can identify the blueprint that God has designed for your life. So with that being said, our guest that we have today is my good friend, Scott Rammage. I've had the pleasure of knowing Scott for the last several years through the old internet online business community. Once again, you think it'd be this really big world, but it's actually really, really tiny. And me and Scott have gotten to know each other the last couple of years through a couple of masterminds we're a part of. And one of the things that I really admire about Scott, which is why he's one of the first people that I reached out to about getting on this show, is he's built his life extremely by design, not just professionally, but personally. And I know putting God at the top of that has been a key component to success in that area. So once again, I want to make sure I have Scott on here so we can pull some gold nuggets and obviously share his testimony. So with that being said, Scott, thank you so much, man, for carving some time out of your busy day in life to come jam out here and talk about the King of Kings with me today.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm super stoked. Anytime I get to chat with you, I'm happy. And anytime I get to chat about God and family and business, like, I'm over the moon. So I couldn't be more excited.
It was a pretty easy sell. You know, you're like, I'll do it. I'm there. I just need to schedule it. So, dude, I think the best place to start is before we get into like your testimony, right? What culmination of events had to happen to get you to the point where it's like, okay, I'm going to do things God's way, right? And you and I being both like very driven entrepreneurs, that's obviously not the easiest thing for people to do at the end of the day, is to relinquish that control. But I'd like to start like, what's the backstory, man, with your faith and how that kind of led you to this aha moment to start doing it God's way?
So I think it's multi-phase, right? It's not just, there's a lot of stories out there. I was doing drugs and those types of stories. And I'm definitely not one of those. But it's definitely almost like a maturity phase. I think I have decided through my life, not anymore, but I decided through my life, I was going to do everything the slow way. But I don't think anybody really goes as fast as they think they do. I was raised in a Christian home. Both my parents were believers, went to church. My sister, me, went to church, is very involved in youth group. I did a lot of mission trips as a kid, all the way through my late teens. And so I always had the foundation, right? And I think it's really important because we want people to understand that there's levels to this thing. And at 52 years old, obviously I've had a little more life experience than a lot. And it's really wasn't unlocked the full potential of kind of like really my faith and that journey really wasn't unlocked until I was 48. So if you think about a guy who was born in this home that went to church, was very involved in church, and then got very involved myself, there's been phases where I didn't go to church, college, totally off the rails, grad school, and then, here and there. But I always had that as a baseline. And I think, I'm very fortunate for that. But I also think that there's a point to where that's a crutch or actually slows people down from actually reaching the level of their belief and their relationship with Christ. And so that's more of like the journey for me is I can't just walk through this life saying I'm a Christian and expect for everything to go the way I want it to go. And, to like this prosperity gospel or whatever you want to call it, like it's just going to magically all unfold in front of me. And I know this is kind of like a big picture. I'm not really telling a story yet, but that's really the whole thing. Was my wife and I've been Christians. We've been doing marriage ministry for years. This next weekend, not this weekend, 2 weekends from now, we'll be in our 29th year anniversary. We've been dating for like 35.
That's awesome.
But we've walked this walk together, but really like 5 years ago was like a drastic change. And then everything about the way that I operate and infuse Christ in my life is on a totally different level.
So what happened 5 years ago to have this epiphany moment?
So there was a message I was listening to, and the guy talked about Moses's mother, I believe it is. Like I read the Bible every year. I read through the Bible every year, and I still am trying to put all the pieces together. But she had to act in faith, and her act of faith was actually taking Moses down to the river and letting go. So letting go of the whatever he was floating on, however the story goes. And up to that moment in my life, I was living very frustrated. And so I was incredibly frustrated. I was really frustrated for the last 10, 15 years that I had reached a income gap. Like no matter what I did business, I've been doing businesses for 20 some years, and I could never exceed this ceiling that I had. And I was so frustrated, and things weren't going my way. And it's just like, I felt like I was just always trying to run in mud. And it's really hard to explain the depth of this. I went through a lot of depression the years before. There's a lot of backstory here, but I think my life was predicated on pain. Not like I did drugs and everything was horrible. It's just like, that's how I saw everything. I saw everything as a challenge. I saw everything as like, how do I gain control of my life and make it the way I want it to be? And then that story about Moses was like, why is this speaking to me? And so I had developed this process of waking up in the morning. It's actually coming out in the book that it's part of the book, but waking up in the morning, doing a gratitude walk. And it turned into this from a 5-minute idea or 15-minute walk into a 45-minute walk every day. And it was not about exercise. It became about, I'm going to do gratitude so that I could ground myself and start to not feel like that heavy weight all the time. And I'm going to do prayer, like focused prayer time. And this process came out. And I remember for months and months, my prayer was, God, like, help me figure this out. I need to figure this out. I need to tell me what I need to do. How do I earn more money? How do I provide for my family? How do I get out of this rut? Because I was really focusing in on being a really good dad. I'd really started to really I think I always was a good dad, but I really wanted to kind of dial this in and help out.
You will be a great dad.
Thank you. I wanted to dial it in and lead other men to it. So there's all these culminating things happening. I'm struggling in business. I'm struggling in understanding what my purpose in life is. And I'm on this walk, and it's after I heard this message, and I'm like, God, what is it? And I got this vision, and apparently there's a negative connotation to this imagery. So I'm so sorry, but it's a vision I had. It was a tiny little hole and in wood. And I got this vision of me holding a rope, trying to push the rope through that hole. And I just couldn't even get, because the rope was long and I'm trying to push it, and and it's just going wherever it wants. And the vision was like, this is exactly, Scott, what you are doing and what you've been doing your entire life. You're trying to force what you call success. And basically God said, you have zero faith. And I was like, oh, well, what do I do with that? And my
Mm.
prayers changed. They just completely changed. So I then on those morning walks would be like, God, help me release everything. I want to release everything. I want to relinquish all control. I want to have complete faith in you. I want to understand what it is that you're meaning by have faith in me. Have the faith of a mustard seed. Like what is this? And so that was my prayer for a while. And there was one morning that I was praying. This was dark. It's in a park. My dog's out prancing around and I'm rucking. And I literally just stopped in my tracks and I lost my breath. I mean, it was just like I felt like a complete weird feeling. And I probably started crying. And it was like everything about my life of control and trying to control and all day I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? That was my life. Just questioning, what am I going to do? Was gone. Absolutely. Within a second was gone. And like there was this thing in that, like I'd say downloaded into me. Like I get what it means to live in faith and let God just take control. And it means I'm just going to serve. Whatever in my business, all I care about is serving. In my family, all I care about is serving. I'm not going to ask what it's going to lead to. I'm not going to try and figure out the next best gadget to make money. I'm just going to serve. And I kid you not, things just fell into place. Like just absolutely fell into place over the next 4 years, 5 years. Just crazy change. And so I went from this like textbook Christian, kind of just following the way that the church says you're supposed to live, be good, do this, to super deep, super faith driven, like, okay, God, you have everything. Right. I have nothing. And I wholeheartedly mean it. And then he's like, okay, finally, you actually opened your hand.
Like, right. Now let me give you all the things.
And he said, oh, hey. And then it's like, there's a great analogy. You can put glass jars out. They used to catch raccoons this way. They'd tie glass jars and they would put a treat inside of the glass jar and a raccoon would go in and reach and make a fist stuck. And the hole was smaller than its fist. So it could get its hand in, but it couldn't ever get it out. So you could just walk up on this raccoon who could just let go and walk away, but you could walk up, smack it over the head, kill it, and you're good, right? You could do the same thing. You can do the same thing with monkeys. They do the same thing with monkeys. So like my entire life, I was a raccoon. I'm sitting there trying to hold on to things and control it. And I'm just getting smacked over the head under my own decision making. And so when you let go and you truly let go, things start to happen. And since that, Jonathan, it's been real interesting because I've tried to tell this story and people are like, no, I need to know the exact thing you did. I'm like, it's not something I did. It's something I didn't.
It was a decision.
Complete
you submitted
submission and complete decision to stop trying.
Yep.
Not a lack of effort, but stop trying. And so that was, like I said, I think it was 48. I'm 52 now. So that was a massive pivotal moment. And then everything I view about my walk with Christ and my relationship with Christ and the way I lead my family and the way I lead in general is spoken and it's from a completely different space. So, you know, there's pre 48 and there's post 48 and it's a completely different man.
Dude, that's so powerful, man. And just to kind of to share with you, like my experience was very similar. You have that deep cry by yourself. It's like that primal, like where's this coming from, right? And it's super uncomfortable because you've been holding it back for so long. And just like you, that was my same issue too. I was trying to control everything. Mm-hmm. And then like I even gave you this analogy when I came to you going, hey, I want to hire you to help me with finding talent on my team. Was like the Jenga set analogy, if you remember. It's like I feel like I would be building this thing up and be like, this is getting pretty tall and pretty cool. But what I didn't know was there's 2 or 3 pieces missing, and all it took was one little blow, and the whole thing would fall over, right? Yeah. And for me, you know, when I bent the knee and fully submitted, like that's when I got downloaded to as well, was like, hey, like what's the plan? Like that was the only thing I wanted from God. Was like, I just like I'm all in. I'm all, I don't care what it is. I'm all in, but you got to tell me something. Like I can't do this anymore. And that's when he revealed to me, like, you're going to retake your family and you're going to go shatter the 1% club. And that's when the tears came out of me, because now that I knew, like I knew this is what I was supposed to do, it gave me a lot more comfort and peace with just being able just to let go. And, you know, kind of like you and what you've experienced. And God, I wish I did this 4 years ago versus like, man, this was in December of this past year when I did this. I'm like, man, imagine if I just done this sooner. All I had to do was just submit and just let it go. And it was that 1% difference. Cause like you, I was doing the right things. I'm going to Elevate Life Church and I'm a good guy and all these different things, but I was still doing it my way. I was still holding back that 1%. But once I let go, just like you, man, dude, that's when everything changed, dude. And a little fun fact too, and I looked this up. I don't have the exact research notes. I'll find it later, maybe put it in the show notes. But whenever you cry, man, to that deep level, it actually changes to neuroplasticity in your brain, which then allows change to happen moving forward. So like kind of having that experience and kind of hearing you, like it's pretty cool, like how that was like that forced to happen so it could rewire how we think so then we can do things differently.
Yeah, I think there's super interesting science. I know there's super interesting science around this. And you know, there's I could just go off on books right now, because when you kind of put them all together, the message is this. Like it literally is, how do we rewire your brain? And they're just doing it in all their own ways. It kind of brings me back to, if you haven't watched Forrest Gump, you need to. But Forrest Gump, Lieutenant Dan. And so Lieutenant Dan is this angry drunk, you know, he got his legs blown off, whatever. And, you know, he's just living kind of a gross life. And he had that moment where the big storm came and he's on the shrimp boat and he's on the mast. And I would challenge you guys to go look at that up on YouTube and watch that scene. And he's just yelling at God. And he's just, bring it on. Like, just like, I dare you, whatever he was saying, right? I don't think many of us men have enough Lieutenant Dan moments, because if you go back and watch that movie, it's that's the complete flip of his life. So my Lieutenant Dan moment was in that dark of the night or early morning in that park, saying, God, like, you got to give me the answers. And he's like, yeah, I already have many times. You're just not submitting. And that was Lieutenant Dan was submitting. And so, like, get that picture in your head. And at some extreme, you've got to go through some heavy emotional thing, because that's where things start to, like, they start to switch. And I do believe it has to do with that neuroplasticity, and God works in us in interesting ways, right? Like when you start to go deep into like science, and then you start to connect it to God's creation, you're like, whoa, like science is cool. You connect those two together and you start to go down that hole. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. You can't you can't deny God. The more you know science, the less you can deny God.
It's like I shared a post a couple days ago about research studies are sharing that, you know, it's not about the sperm that's the fastest that determines like what becomes fertilized. It's the egg actually picks.
I saw that.
Which one? So I'm like, man, if that doesn't like get you fired up, it's like, man, I didn't get picked because I was the fastest. I got picked because it was me.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Science is crazy, but it's just all part of God's creation, right?
Yeah.
So like, I just tell people, like, you've got to get yourself to that moment to really, really relinquish. And it's Jonathan, it's a really frustrating moment when people ask, like, I'd like to have a phone call with you and find out how you released all of that. It's a very common thing in entrepreneurs. When I tell the story in little tidbits, they're like, can I have a phone call with you? And they get on, and I feel like they're disappointed. I'm like, you just have to submit to God. They're like, well,
right.
Why didn't you just text me that? Because I don't know how to do that. And they're like, well, how do you do that? I'm like, I don't know, dude. You gotta search, and it's gotta be heart level. So it's a little frustrating but I do tell the story of trying to push a rope through that wood hole. I try to tell the story of, Moses being just let go, and that allowed God to push him where he needed to be, to put him where he needed to be. And so, for some reason, those visualizations were so strong for me. They finally kind of clicked, that switch changed. And then because of that transformation of, okay, whatever, here you go. It wasn't a whatever, but it was like, here you go. And then learning to practice that daily. God, I submit to you. I just want to serve you today. And if that's through serving other people, opportunities just started popping into place. It's just bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. And of course, I've ebbed and flowed, and I have a very, very stringent practice. It's not stringent. I have a very developed practice to keep my mind right, to always be thinking of gratitude. And I take that gratitude. It's like, just be thankful for things. Well, I actually thank God. I'm like, God, thank you for, I'm so grateful for, I give it to him. But those things have made an incredible difference in my life, and I practice them very regularly.
Yeah. Do you know something that helps me? And once again, like, I'm in my first read through of the Bible. I'm in Samuel 2. Not going to lie, I took a pit stop for a little bit. I was like, this is getting heavy, man. Like, because I'm not into, like, the fun parts, the prosperity part, where, like, everyone's like, I watched The Chosen. It's great, which is a fantastic show, by the way.
Right.
But as I've read the Bible, one thing I've seen as a pattern, which once again give me a lot of peace, is everything God starts, he finishes. Not one thing does he do a quarter of, or a half, or 9/10 of it. He finishes it every time. So, like, as I'm going through life, and like you said, like, yeah, like, I've experienced tons of blessings and opportunities and doors opening that, man, I tried to kick in for years. And trust me, I tried every way. I tried bulldozers, I tried fire axes, I tried all different methods, and none of it worked. And now they're just bursting open. There's still seasons you go through where it's like you get tested, right? It's not just like a fountain of blessings and you never experience pain or doubt or frustration again. It's just when you go through those valleys this time, you have a better understanding of knowing whose you are and knowing that it's going to be completed, the assignment that you're given. We just have to operate within that place and not mess it up and get in our own way. So, like, that's something that helps me when I'm in that spot and I'm feeling that way. It's just reminding myself that, like, God finishes everything he starts. His timing is going to happen when he decides it. Like, it won't make any sense to me, but no, every single time I've reached that point where I'm like, it finally does happen, I'm like, man, this was such a better way to do it than how my plan was. Like, my plan sucked.
Well, I think you also start to look at the things that you did, the decisions you made, the struggles you've gone through, all the bad things, if you will, in the past. And it's been rewired for me to look at those as those were the path that got me to where I am. And so then you rewrite those stories of like, oh, that's what I was learning there. So then you kind of think of like, okay, through my entire life, I've learned these lessons. I feel like I've been slower than a lot of people, but I learned these lessons through pain. I learned these lessons through failure. I learned these lessons through, whatever, like bad situations. But every single one of those is a gift. And that's kind of going into like being a father and how I parented was I intend just the way I'm wired. The way I process is verbal. So I will verbalize what has happened in my life to the people around me. So my boys have always been, I have two boys. They've always been in the car was the time when I'm like, hey, and I would tell them stories of my failures. And I don't know why I did this. I just like, hey, when I ran my bike shop, I wasn't a good father. But you guys thought I was great, but I was so busy trying to fulfill my duty of bringing you money and riches that I didn't give you time. And I really want for you to really think about that. And here's the lesson I learned. I learned that people could care less about how much money you have and how many things they have, the right people. And they will care so much more about who you are in their lives at that moment. And so like for me, rewiring, going back. I've always shared that with my boys. And so I've lived my failures in front of them to show them the path to, lesser failures, but they still have to
Right.
make their own choices. But rewiring back, looking now, I'm like, no, every single thing, every single hardship, every stupid thing I did, all the money I lost, the people I burned and that will never talk to me again, that was designed by God to give me these stories to help other people. That's why I'm really super excited about the book. It's all like all these little things start unearthing. Like, oh, I should tell that story. I should tell that story. Like there's probably 40 of them that I'm like,
Right.
they're gone. And I'm like, oh, I wish I would have remembered and wrote it down so I could tell that. But it's the rewiring and God saying, no, that was on accident. Not
Right.
one thing was on accident. Like you struggled so much with trying to control and lack of faith because you needed to be that person that told people, I get it. I totally understand where you're at and I get it. And here's the journey I went through. And so it just becomes this pathway. It's this pathway for other people to follow if they want. And it becomes a path, but more importantly, my boys, right? Like my family and what that means. That's what I call a legacy, right? Like a lot of people are like, I want to leave them a lot of money. I'm like, they could care less about the money. They even told me, we don't care. You like the legacy is what matters. And for me, that legacy is living a life that is full, living a life that puts God first. And what does that look like? And living a life of serving people, because we all have our own purpose in life. And that's another journey I really had to go through a few years ago was what is actually my purpose? I love serving people, but what does that mean? Why am I doing what I'm doing? I even had a breakdown, Jonathan, not too long ago. I'm like, Kim, like I'm making great money and it really means nothing. And then that's when you have to kind of go, God, what is this all about? Tell me what this is about so that I can get the most out of it. And it was very clear after that. But now I'm rambling, but there's just so much you can learn from your life before. And I haven't figured everything out, but I made some big strides. It was that flip of the switch for me, like you had.
Yeah. So let's transition then into, what I wanted to get into with in terms of like living life by design. Right. So what's funny about your story, I don't mean funny, like, ha. I mean, you ran all these businesses and all these different industries and you've had all the pains and all the heartbreak, all the things that go along with it. And now you literally have a company that's all designed about getting business owners back their time and their money and their peace. Right. Which I think is just a beautiful bow.
It is
On top of your story at the end. But I know it's not just that how you run your business, it's how you run your family too in your personal life. What are some of the biblical principles that you've been able to pull out, extract, and understand, and then apply and go, hey, here's a principle I use in this area of my life, and here's what it looks like. And let's start unpacking some of that.
Probably the biggest, most important one when it comes to living my life the right way and modeling the very best thing I can for my boys was all around marriage. And so there's this analogy, as corny as it is, it really makes sense, is that a marriage is not a contract. Well, it is a contract. A lot of us get into marriage as a contract, but really, if you dig into like the biblical history and what God really designed marriage as, is a covenant. Covenant is way deeper than a contract. And God says like, hey, the closer each of you get to me, the closer you'll be together. And I'm like, well, so in other words, seek God, seek my ways, seek the righteous path. You're not going to live righteously because we're all fallen, but seek righteousness. So it was this dumb analogy. And my wife actually shared a video of someone I've never seen on video. But there's a ladder, and the two-sided ladder is shaped like an A, right? It's like, okay, God, we always see him as being high. Well, he's a point up in the sky. A lot of us like, oh, he's up in heaven. Who like for real? Seriously. But anyway, okay. So the closer we get to God, the closer we become together. So as a wife and a husband move up the ladder closer to God, the more they seek God, the closer they get together. And that analogy really, really sat with me. And so I'm like, wait a minute. So many guys and so many families have this all wrong. They get married and they're doing their married thing. Then they have kids and it changes everything. They're like, oh, I need to go to church just, so my kids see the right way. I need to live this way.
Right.
But the focus for both parents typically becomes way out of alignment, and it becomes focus on the kid and then kids. But what happens in that moment is that actually drives you guys further apart, and you start to live like parallel lives. My wife and I did this early on. You start to live parallel lives. And it was not her fault, by the way. It was 100% mine. You start to live side lives that is serving the kids. So you're doing the things to serve the kids. And this is all wrong. It's all wrong. The very top thing that you should be seeking is God. And so for me, like when we talk about practices and the ways that I remind myself of this and stay in alignment is when I wake up, the only thing outside of going to the bathroom and getting a little caffeine that I do, no matter where I'm at in the world, no matter how inconvenient it is, no matter what time, when I wake up, I read the Bible. I do a prayer. I have these prayers written down. They're very designed for me, for my family, for what the big picture in my life is. I read those, even though they're memorized, I still read them every single day. And then I read the Bible. And so I've decided, okay, my ladder values are in a ladder, and there's a top rung, and that top rung is the most important thing, and that's God. And so very, very often when people get married, that God drops below the spouse, right? So God's like demoted. And then you have a kid, and that kid pops up to the top, and then it's the spouse, and then it's God. And then sometimes it's the kid and God, and then the spouse. It gets crazy. So I have done this intentional organization of my life where if I'm, no matter where I'm at, I'm gonna read those scriptures. I'm gonna say the prayers I say, and I'm going to read my Bible every day. Like I track this. We're going on 6 years. I missed one day, but it's because of a time zone shift, and it clocked out and switched before I could. I didn't miss.
It was a technicality.
We're like at 1,400 days straight, but it's really six plus years or something of that nature. But that's because I'm like, hey, look, if I put God first, I truly physically need to put him first so that I can set that clock in my head every single day and I can do the reset. Then I go and find my wife, and she's a very focused person. So she's out there. She's ready to do. She has a YouTube channel with fitness. So she's getting all geared up and going and filming. And I'm like, I'm either going to give her a hug, a kiss her, tell her I love her or something, because she's second rung. Like, it's like that important to me. And then kids, because here's the truth. And God says this, if we seek him, all the rest is going to come in place. Right. By loving our wife, by loving God and loving our wives on that level, our kids will turn out phenomenal because they're modeling. And so dad of girls, think this, how you treat your wife is exactly what they're going to search for in a husband. Your number one job is to treat your wife the way you want your daughter to be treated. And the way you treat your wife is exactly the way your boys are going to treat their wives. My oldest son, he was visiting here, and he's telling my youngest, who's 17, he's like, you're really lucky. He gets paid by my company. Both of them do. But he's like, I didn't have this, right? Like, we didn't have this. And he goes, and we were talking, he's like, you spend so much money on your girlfriend. So much money. I'm like, yeah, it's crazy. And my wife looks at me and she goes, he's doing exactly what you do. I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. So I've modeled that, I shower her. Right. So I've seen it come to fruition. Like what you do in your household will be repeated. And so the biblical principle of God first is undeniably the best thing that any man or woman can do for their family.
Yeah, dude. I agree. That principle changed me and Renee's marriage 1,000%.
Yeah.
Cause we didn't have a kid at the time, but we were living side by side as like basically roommates is what it felt like for a very long time. And once again, totally my fault because my job to lead, I wasn't leading at that time. And, once again, I got to a point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Right? Something's got to change. This doesn't feel right. And this is where we had a conversation where the way that I broke it down was like, hey, we're going to put God first, you and I second, Arya third, family of choice and origin is fourth, and business is fifth.
Mm-hmm.
And for the longest time, Scott, and I know you deal with this on even more so than I do with the nature of who you work with entrepreneurs, is so many of them are putting business first or business second underneath whatever, maybe their spouse needs an emergency or whatever. And I know I did that for the longest time where I put work above everything else, and I was miserable. I was in the worst shape of my life, mentally, physically. I was like not even making the best money. And when I did, it wasn't sustainable. Once again, the roller coaster ride. And I get tested on this till this day now, because trust me, there's multiple times where it'd be easy to slide that business role into that 1 or 2 spot. And just an example this week, like Renee ended up getting the flu from my daughter that she brought home. So she's been throwing up and all those things. So I had to pivot the other day and literally reschedule a bunch of business appointments and things I had planned to do because she needed me to show up for her and needed me to show up for our daughter. Now, there was a season where I would have been like, no, like, suck it up. Like, too bad. I got to take care of the business. Right. But for doing that for so long and realizing that that's putting your ladder against the wrong wall, it was a very easy decision for me to do that. And funny thing is, Scott, I got a ton of new business opportunities that just showed up in my DMs the next day.
How does that
because
happen?
of that? Just showing up, just like, thanks. Yeah, sure. I'll give you a call. Right. And it's just crazy how much peace you get when you're willing to submit and put God first in everything. Yeah. So I just wanted to shoot. Go ahead.
That's an incredible story. And the way I see it is like he grabbed that rope for you and pulled it through the hole. Like, hey, you do what you need to do. I'm going to take care of the rest. Right. Like, it's a different mindset. And like, look, it may not always turn out rosy. Like, no, you're going to go through rough spots. I've been very blessed in business, very blessed. I think we've done really well serving our clients. And then that, of course, it reciprocates and builds an amazing business. But I'll be very transparent with you, which I typically am to everybody. But last night when I went to bed, I was very frustrated with myself. So I'd spent 2 days with my American team. I have an American-based team. Flew them in here. It's a lot of energy, right? And I came home, and I couldn't go to dinner with my boys and my wife because we had the gas people coming because they said there might be a leak at our house. So I was like, well, I got to stay. And I was just so tired. I was so tired. And I am very, very, very dialed into work. Is not the top thing on the list. But the thing with entrepreneurs is we just suck at remembering that. We are really bad. So I'm tired. And so here I am scrolling, and then I look up. They got home from dinner. I ate. And I look up, and my wife's getting ready for bed. And I'm like, I just spent like 2 hours scrolling mindlessly, not in conversation. I was so devastated, and not mad at her. I was mad at myself because that's the work. That's a result of work. I tuned out because I used work as I'm tired. I'm mentally shot. And the truth is, Jonathan, like if I would have put my phone down, like set it in another room, because that's what I have to do, set it in another room, I would have been tuned in. I would have had so much more energy. But before this, I have the freedom to do that because I have a team that's built out. Like everything is, just dialed in and taken care of. And there's people, it's the who, not how principle for me. And so then I turned that, I can work at all times. I can be on that was me. I was checking my email. I was working while the family's watching movies, just work. But you have to be careful, because even when you get that figured out, you will be drawn back in. The devil has a way of pulling you back in. And here I am. I lost several hours, or an hour of time I could have just been spending with my wife talking in the name of work. It is all work related. And it's that entrepreneur mindset of we just work hard, and then we tune out. And I've been programmed for that for so many years that you have to be incredibly intentional about, no, wait. work is way down on that ladder. Like
Right.
it's way down there. So, it never, I think my message to people is it never goes away as some sort of struggle. And you have to be just incredibly intentional on spending that time and intentionally putting things away to focus in on what really matters.
Right. No, that's great, man. I appreciate you sharing that. So before we start wrapping things up, I do want to hear, okay, so that's a great personal one that obviously bleeds into business and just life in general. What's your favorite business biblical principle that you've like instilled that's created success in your company?
So there's one lesson I had to learn. It was really hard, and I think most people haven't learned this, is that like if we're truly going to be in God's will, I don't own that business. I own it with God. I've put my business out of my terminology, because I'm training my brain to believe like, no, God, this is God's, and what happens is God. I have to make decisions, but really ultimately this is God's business. So I believe that's a very, very important principle. But again, it's the serving. Like it's the serving. And like we all know that the lower someone pays, the bigger a pain in the butt they are. We all know that as business owners, right? There's no way around it. So when we serve with our business, that doesn't mean like giving things away or reducing our dollar. A lot of Christians get that messed up. They're like, well, we're supposed to help the needy.
Right. More broke you are, the closer you are to God, which is nonsense.
And so for me, it's more of like, I'm really generous. And so the generosity comes to one, missions for me, like missions where people don't have opportunities and need it. So that's where money goes. Like giving is probably one of the biggest principles. Like the top 10% goes to God, no matter how much it is. And that's probably the principle I would tell to people over and over and over and over and over again. And then, and then serving sometimes, and serving people in your community, the best thing you can do is just show them love through different opportunities. You know, I tip ridiculous when it went to the right people, right there, and to the people who are serving and are grateful and have great gratitude. And it's just, that's I think a way to put light into the world and be like, hey, like, but I think for almost every business owner, that's a believer, they would see a complete difference in their life and in their own attitude if they would just start with that 10%.
No, I agree. So what's your advice to someone that maybe wants to do it, but they're struggling with it? So, for example, I used to be one of those people.
Yeah.
I was like, this is my money. Why would I give this away? And then eventually I reached the point where I'm like, all right, I'll just test it and start doing it. Saw some cool things happen, which, by the way, is not why you do it.
No.
But it just reaffirms that belief of sowing and reaping. And once again, it was just something that it took me a long time to make that leap to it. What's your advice for that person listening right now?
So it's all about discipline, quite honestly. Like that's obedience. That one is just obedience. That's obeying God. This is what He said to do. Like, I just believe super strongly about that. But if you can't do that, if you cannot do that, how can you do the things that you need to do to get you to the big goals you have? So I have a coach. Many people would know. He's amazing, but he is dialed into my numbers. And every week he's like, how much money did you put aside? How much money did you put aside? And so if I hadn't gotten that thing figured out, then like the savings and the big goals I have and the property we want and all these things would be so much harder. And so it's a discipline thing. It starts as discipline. I just need to be obedient and I just have to do it. And it's just like working out. You just start and you stay consistency, and then that consistency becomes the norm. I even went through I don't talk about this much, but a couple of years ago I did 20%. And my wife's like, she was 100% on board. She goes, if you're feeling like you need to 20%, do 20%. Like I'm all on board. And then she's like, hey, I need a little more money. We're not quite paying all our bills because all this money's going to tithe. And I'm like, let me do the math here. If I give you an extra $1,000, you're only going to get now $800. it's like this brain game, but I think you just have to start. It's just a faith. Again, that's just a faith thing. I don't know a trick other than just to do
it. Easy enough, man.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, it's been awesome having you share your story and being on the show, man. I know I've gleaned a lot from it. What's the best way for people to connect with you, follow you, do all the things? Like, once again, you put out tons of content that's great for entrepreneurs, for growing and scaling their business, and just great all around, just life advice, man. So what's the best way to follow you?
Well, I'm 52, so Facebook's my platform.
Me too, dude. I'm only on Facebook as well.
It all posts to Instagram, and I do reply. But yeah, it's Scott Rammage on Facebook with 2 M's on Facebook and on Instagram, and that is absolutely the best way. I personally respond to every single message, even though I have a team that could do it. I still do it. So that's where to find me. It's super simple.
Cool. Well, Scott, thank you so much, man, for coming on the show and sharing your time and your treasure. I've had a blast jamming out with you. And, for those of y'all that tuned in for this episode, once again, if you got value from it, please share this with someone that needs to hear this message today. Once again, obviously it helps support the channel, but most importantly, it supports the mission that I'm on, which is to help expand the kingdom of God by showing people God's unique blueprint that they have for their life. So with that being said, thank you for tuning in to the show. Scott, thank you for coming on, and I'll see y'all in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Kingdom First Podcast, God's Blueprint for Your Best Life. We hope you found it inspiring, entertaining, and thought-provoking. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on iTunes and Spotify. Your feedback means the world to us and helps others discover our podcast. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube and Facebook to stay updated on upcoming episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and everything else. Thank you again for being a part of our podcast community. Until next time, stay all in.